Welcome back, students. This is the second question from the first extra practice assignment for those of you who want extra practice on their AP exam. Again, this would not be one of the mandatory assignments. This is just extra if you wanted to practice. So let's take a look at what they're asking. So they say the figure above shows a graph of a piecewise linear function f for -4 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 12. The function g is defined by g of x equals the integral from 2 to x of f of t dt. Does g have a relative minimum, a relative maximum, or neither at x equals 10? Justify your answer. Does the graph of g have a point of inflection at x equals 4? Justify your answer. Find the absolute minimum value and the absolute maximum value of g on the interval from -4 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 12. Justify your answers. And lastly, for -4 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 12, find all intervals at which g of x equals 0. So the biggest thing that's popping out to me is, one, we have two functions that we need to compare. We have f and we have g. F is given to us by a graph. And g is given to us by an equation. The next thing that pops out to me is that we're dealing with maximums, minimums, points of inflections, and absolute maximums and absolute minimums. With those being absolute, it's important to realize that they say greater than or equal to. So we're going to have to make sure we include our -4 and our 12 when we need to. So because we're working with maximums and minimums, what we want to do is we want to make an analytics chart. So we start off with f of x. And then they tell me that g of x is the antiderivative of f. Well, if g is the antiderivative of f, then that would mean that f is g prime and f prime is g double prime. So let's set up our grid. We want to check these values. We're going to go ahead and follow this template of our graph here. So we're going to start at -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We're just going to want to test those values, the signs of those values, to see if they're going to be positive or negative in between. Alright, so let's start off with the f prime. I think that's the easiest because f prime is positive when the graph looks like this, and it's negative when the graph goes down like that. So we can see from -4 to 2, it's positive. -4 to -2. Then to -2 to 0 is positive. Then we drop down, so it's negative. Then we go up, so it's positive. Then we drop down, so it's negative, negative. And then up again, positive. And then down again, negative. So now we want to check our values for f of x, or g prime of x. Since this is our graph of x, we know that f of x is positive anywhere above the x-axis, and f of x is going to be negative anywhere below the x-axis. So let's check. So from -4 to -2, we are below the x-axis, so that's going to be negative. Then we can see from -2 all the way to 6, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals, we are going to be positive. So that's from -2, 0, 2, 4, all the way up to 6. Then we can see we're negative all the way until the end. And then we have our graph comparing for g prime and g double prime. So let's see if this will help us answer their specific questions. And it will, because that's why we did this. So does g have a relative minimum, so question A, does g have a relative minimum, a relative maximum, or neither at x equals 10? Justify your answer. Well, if we're looking for a minimum and a maximum, we're going to want where g prime of x equals 0. So that means we're looking for g prime. When it's equal to 0, it's a switch from negative to positive. So we're going to look at, we're 10. So at 10 for g prime, that's right here. It's negative, negative. So that means there's no switch. So we're going to tell them, no, there is not a maximum or minimum at x equals 10. So question A, say neither g prime of x is negative as it approaches ten from the left and the right. Therefore, there is no max or min. And that would be a good answer on the AP exam. That'll get you full credit. It's a good place, again, you can pause it if you want to examine it, but I'm going to get started on question B in 5, 4. So, question B, does the graph of G have a point of inflection at x equals 4? Justify your answer. So just as before, we need to know what information do we need to find a point of inflection. Well, point of inflection for G means that we are looking at G double prime of x is equal to 0. So let's go down, look at 4 for G double prime. It goes from positive to negative, which means it has to equal 0. So that means, for question B, the answer is yes. Since G double prime approaches 4 positively from the left, but negatively from the right, G has an inflection point at 4. And again, this is a good answer for the AP exam. And again, if you want to pause right here, it's a good time to look it over, find any questions you might have for me during live chat. And let's get started on question C. Question C. Find the absolute minimum value and the absolute maximum value of G when the interval -4 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 12. Justify your answers. So, we have a lot of different places where that could be. But we know that a maximum and a minimum only occur when there is a change in sign in the first derivative. So again, we're going to look at G prime of x. We're going to look for where it changes signs. We have a negative to a positive, positive to a negative. Remember I said before, we're going to watch out for these less than or equal to's. So we're also going to have to check 12 and -4 because we don't know what's going on over here. We don't know what's going on over here. We can't determine if those are going to be maximums or not. So we're going to include them just to be safe. So what we want to do is we want to find out of these 4 which is the largest and which is the smallest. So I want to find G of -4, G of -2, G of 6, and G of 12. Now before I move forward, I'm going to let you know I'm going to do a lot of fast integration techniques that if you are not sure where I get a certain value from, you should talk to me in a live chat or shoot me an email. Let's get started. So we can see that G of x is the integral from 2 to x of f of t dt. So that means that G of -4 is the integral from 2 to -4 of f. G of -2 is the integral from 2 to -2 of f. G of 6 is the integral from 2 to 6 of f. And G of 12 is the integral from 2 to 12 of f. So all they're asking for then, remember, the integral is just the area between that value and the x-axis. So if I wanted to find it for -4, that means you go from 2 to -4. So that's from here to here. So you want this area right there. So we can see that we have 1, 2, 3 triangles, but one's above the axis and one's below. Those ones are going to cancel each other out, and this is the total area that I want to use. So that's going to be a 2 by 4 triangle. So the area equals 1/2 2 times 4 equals 4. Now, we have to be careful here, because there's a rule when we did our integrations. If we go to the left, it becomes negative. Because we're going to the left, we're going to have a negative value. So it's going to be -4. And that's a couple of the things I was talking about with the complex integrations. If you want me to explain that further, talk to me in a live chat. Let's find g of -2. So g of -2 is just the area from 2 to -2. Well, that's just from here to here. And that's a 4 by 4 triangle, so that's 1/2 4 times 4. And that's just going to give you, and that's going to give you -8. Again, it's negative because we're going left. We're starting at 2 and we go left, so it's going to be negative. Now from 2 to 6, very similar, except we're going to have the 4 by 4 triangle, so that's going to give you a +8. And now from 12, it's going to be from 2 all the way to 12. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. But we can see here, those are congruent, so they're going to cancel out, and all we're left with is this one triangle. So that's going to give us another -4. So we can see then that my maximum is the biggest number, which is the only positive number. So we have a maximum at 6, and my biggest negative will be here at -2. So I have an absolute max in g of 6 equals 8, and an absolute min in g of -2 equals -8. And that's a good answer. That'll get you full credit for that part on the AP exam. Again, you can pause it here to look it over. If you have any questions, talk to me in the live chat, shoot me an email.